Still with me in the studio, I have Professor Aworawo, Professor of International Relations at the University of Lagos. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough, and Professor Kila, the Executive Director as a Center for International and Professional Studies, CIAPS. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Yes, well, I mean, we've had about 4 guests. First, Mr. Dankule, who addressed issues in the energy sector, about NNPC and the refineries, and about electricity, and also about consumer protection issues. The FCCPC saying, oh, the body will go after people who inflate prices. And he also talked about President Tinubu, who has now arrived in China for the Forum of China-Africa Cooperation. We had, our second guest visiting from Senegal, who talked about the transition process in Senegal 4 months after President Bassirou Diomaye Faye assuming office. And then, of course, we talked about the clumsiness in the House of Football in Nigeria. We've been told we have a new coach, but now there's been a twist in the tale. Let me start with you, Yemi Adamolekun.
All right. I think for me, if we start with NNPC and oil and gas, so subsidy, no subsidy, largest, I think according to Agora policy, 2023 was the second highest in recent time after 2011. And 2011 was what, the madness of 2011 was what led to Occupy Nigeria in January 2012. I mean, we can talk a lot about what is, what was, what should be. But I think I'm at this point spending more of my time thinking about how do we really hold government accountable in this manner. There's nothing new in this thing. You get up on stage as swearing in as a president and you say subsidy has been removed. There's no plan. A month later, we decide to devalue a naira or float a naira, whatever the language is. And crude is priced in dollars. So how does a change in exchange rate not going to affect the fact that you supposedly are changing the price of fuel when it's not really the fact that you're fully deregulating the sector so there's competition? So we can analyze all these things and say all these things. I mean, I like what he said about Kaduna Refinery, that he's not discounting the fact that there's pollution or an issue, but he's sure that it's not from crude because the pipes are broken. So yet we want to concession, not concession, and these are the same refineries that we've done turnaround maintenance for several times. I think somebody actually needs to do a study on that, on how much has been budgeted for turnaround maintenance. Promises have been made around when they're going to start working. So again, sorry, I didn't want to spend time on the challenges that we all know. And then my question then is, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the Minister of Petroleum. How do Nigerians hold him accountable? How do Nigerians get NNPC to stop lying brazenly on TV every day? How do we hold a company that's technically private but behaving like a government appendage, or a president that signs off payments of money that belongs to the federation, i.e. the federal government, the state government, and the local government, and everybody is looking as if this is normal? Now, I mean, we all say it in side conversations, state capture, state capture, state capture. But I think we really, for me, I mean, coming to have these conversations, it's not, let's not belabor what we know to be insanity. As fuel subsidy, the volume of what we're paying on subsidy, the fact that NNPC keeps lying every time they do a press conference or somebody from NNPC is speaking, the fact that the president is the Minister of Petroleum, nobody else. So whatever, as Dan Kunle said, whatever the Minister of State might say or not say, he's speaking to, I guess, earn his salary. But that's the question I hope that we can have. How do we hold the president? How do we hold NNPC or the GMD of NNPC accountable so Nigerians are not spending productive hours just queuing for fuel? The fact that it hasn't even become, I mean, it's a nice thing. I mean, I don't want to sound contradictory, but it's good to see Nigerians queuing. Not that the queue is good, but actually just following a queue than people just fighting and just out of frustration when they get to petrol stations. But these are the questions we should ask. Dankole also spoke about the Consumer Protection Agency and the fact that we're not that trying to control prices in 2024. While I understand that that's a challenge, I think what Mr. Bello was saying, which I do understand, is the fact that there has to be, and I mean, okay, let me start. I understand retailers' challenge. I buy this phone at $5 because of the exchange rate, and I'm selling this phone at $5. Because of the floating exchange rates, by the time I go back to market and to bring it in, it's now the value of it is 10. So to kind of make up or not sure where it's going to go, I probably inflate the price ridiculously. So I can understand that conversation, but a fiat as a consumer protection agency around price control, the way it came out is a bit tricky, but it's something that they should, that should be looked into in terms of fair pricing for consumers. The BUA chairman came out, I think a few days ago as well, said the same thing. Or was it last year? Yeah, he was talking about what they did last year when they did their AGM a week or so ago, that they were selling cement to their distributors at $3,500 in an effort to reduce the price for customers. But their own distributors were now retailing it at $7,000, $8,000. So their own good intent of making it affordable to consumers was not passed across. So they stopped it. And again, and I think that's the essence of what consumer protection is trying to do, not fix prices. And then lastly, on Mr. Ndur, you should have. I was expecting you to ask if it was related to Yusu Ndur. I mean, Ndur is
he's a junior brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It's
nice.
the same family.
Nice, nice. So you did ask him about the media, and I thought his answer was very diplomatic, to say the very least. He said, obviously, he's a journalist, TV producer, I think you said, and that the fact that they have freedom of speech, and that, like he kept saying, it could be more. But for the continent and maybe the sub-region, that they do have freedoms and, in a sense, almost nothing to complain about per se. But I wish he had spoken about what happened 2 weeks ago when all media platforms did a blackout because they felt attacked by the Senegalese government, supposedly owing back taxes. And then the government then decided to freeze their bank accounts and seize equipment. Sounds very much like what could happen in Nigeria, but I'm not quite sure what that means in terms of freedom of the press, and it's certainly something to look at. Thank you.
Professor Kila?
Let me start from sport, which is the last thing
yeah.
you saw. That's the sport. I think the way the issue of the engagement of a coach, a foreign coach from Nigeria, is a very vexatious index of indolence and incompetence. You'll imagine that in the organization that Nigeria, for which Nigeria has a minister, has a commission, has agencies, has people who drive around using FGN cars, disturbing you with their sirens sometimes, or getting VIP passes in the name of Nigeria. There'll be people who, before they make an announcement, will grow through the legal side, the admin side, the HR side, to know if we have it in our hand or not. You know, this kind of errors that you make with Ajayi and Sons, not even complaining. This is a kind of error of Mama Chike's store. I'm not even sure you do that there. These are the kind of things you say, or maybe you say in faith, that we're having that coach by his grace. As Pastor Tunde Bakari showed me, the contract is not by his grace. You know, you want to be sure. What if done is embarrassing and vexatious? And I say these words because sometimes people say, don't use that word. But I'm very convinced that we don't use this word, we're not going to improve. We need to, if we want to grow in progress and prosperity, we need to be allergic to incompetence. We need to be allergic to this kind of indolence. What's the Nigerian word? Anyhowness in which we do this. We need to take care of that. I'm also very interested, I think very interested in the case of the Nigerian footballer living in Naples, Napoli Football Club. It's unfortunate because I think his problem there is bad administration. He has taken something Nigerian with him abroad because he needs a team that can handle his admin and his legal work so that he's not shot out of the window as it has happened. And I argue that when we do not protect a talent, when we do not guide a talent, and as a matter of fact, when we do not indulge a talent, we all lose out. So I think some people have mismanaged that, and it is all our loss to that. Senegal, The issue of the press, I think we need to take a closer look. Is it press clamped down, or is it an economic issue? Because in reality, those guys do owe money. We need to see. And by the way,
should just freeze their accounts because of that and not allow them to operate? How can I pay you back money I
if you're
owe
not
you
operating?
when I'm not in business?
Well, that sounds like what Nigerian ministers do when they close a company, rather say for something like
Indeed.
that. But we need to look at it. But I think economic interference is one thing. On the tone of clamping down on media is another thing. So we need to get a closer look. But that is one aspect of the present. By the way, I'm not very impressed by the answers of Mr. Ndu, because this idea of relative thing, I don't like it. You should say there should be a standard index. Is the phrase free or not? That for me is a yes or no question, not compared to. That I'm not blown away by that. But what I do, like to point out, because I follow the matter of Senegal, is that this chap, in about 120 days in power, has actually started some incisive reforms. And you asked what lessons to learn. Undel says, power to the people. I would like us to also learn that the guy promised to improve life. He took about, I think, 700 million bond or something like that. And they did it, infused it in the market. And the price of food and other items actually reduced in Senegal in the past 100 and something days that has been in power, in the past 4 months. I think he clocked 100 days in June. So they have done something. They've asked for some auditing. The expectations are very high. Mind you, he set himself that expectation, so no sorry for him. The one who came across as if the Messiah is coming, and people like you, Ruben Abati, and people like you, David Aworawo, celebrating the young man and the new wave. So if you set him up, continue praying for him that he works well, Professor Aworawo, because you are very excited about the man. So, but I think so far he's doing well. So, I mean, that is something to be said. NNPC, or energy in general. Let me start by saying that the presence and the existence of the president as a minister for petroleum compounds the situation. I was going to say only compounds, but, it compounds it in a very peculiar and noticeable way, or very noteworthy way. Normally, energy crisis should be treated as national crisis in any country. I dare say telecom as well, because something is rearing its head in telecom at the moment. I think anything that has to do with energy should be a national issue, and where it does not flow, where it is interrupted or delayed, should be treated like a crisis, because that is what we used to do almost everything we do in our lives. So I think it should be treated that way, and the fact that it's not treated that way, it is that if there's one visible, undisputable factor or element for which one is tempted to miss Warri, is fuel queues. And that is a bad thing. I really want to say this to all the people in the presidency, that they should not let that kind of stark contrast appear so much. The fact that we have fuel queues, which we did not have under the past administration, that people like me condemned as a bad administration. So I think we need to take that serious. If NNPC wants private investors, one of the first rules is transparency and accountability. People need to know what's happening to their money. That is NNPC looking for money. We, as a people and as a government, I think we need to be talking of more refineries. That should be the real goal that we're pushing for in the mid to long term.
Professor Aworawo?
Well, I will go in that order from energy crisis to sports. It is clear that Nigeria faces intense energy crisis, manifested in the way NNPC has carried on and the way the queues that we have seen, the filling stations in recent times. It's all a manifestation of the energy crisis and how it has been handled. I've said this several times. There are different layers. One layer is the crude itself. More action should take place in the bush. The stations where crude is pumped, the pipelines where so much money is lost. And we seem to have accepted it as the norm. If we're able to get 1.3 million barrels per day and others take 700,000 barrels per day, then we are fine. That should be unacceptable. We should not accept that as a norm. I can't remember any other country in the world where we have such, thefts and it is accepted as the norm. Because if that is sorted out, we'll be able to get, foreign exchange. We'll be able to have crude for Dangote refinery. By the way, the refineries they want to privatize. The Port Harcourt refinery, the capacity is just 60,000 barrels per day. Dangote is 650,000 barrels per day. That's why when they treat Dangote with levity, I get upset. It happens all over the world. Companies that are strategic, government supports them. And I am using this forum to advocate support for Dangote and his refinery so that we can have fuel. I mean, if that refinery were working just 40%, 50% capacity, we wouldn't have those queues that we have now. So it's not just a case of, one capitalist who is exploiting us, let him carry his cross. It's beyond that. And also the thousands that are employed there. If it doesn't work and those thousands are laid off, there will be more crisis in the employment sector. So government needs to, first, the NNPC, deal with crude, and of course, come to this side, like, Yemi has said, transparency. There's need for transparency. The other time, they said there's no subsidy being paid. They use one technical language, shortfall or something like that, to try to explain away what is indeed subsidy. There needs to be transparency so that all of these contradictions can be sorted out and we can have energy. And of course, for power, this band 18 doesn't make sense to me. That I use 1,000, what they call them now? Is it mega what they call them now?
Kilowatt units.
Yes. I use 65. I use 1,000, I pay 65,000. Another person uses 1,000 and pay 225,000. I mean, if they wanted to increase it maybe to 80 per kilo, that makes sense. But to say some people will be paying, I will use 1,000, I pay 225,000. Another person uses 1,000, he pays 65,000. Within the same, it's just that we don't pursue our rights to a logical conclusion. That thing won't see light of day. If you want to increase it slightly for everybody, that makes sense. On campus at University of Lagos, we have not had light. Our light was yanked off since Tuesday. It only restored yesterday.
You're dead toast.
On their own, they just threw us from band B to band A. The other thing is this. The band you belong to, you don't have a choice.
Okay, fair.
They just put you in any band. They just migrate you to band A to get more money from you. Yeah. And we sit and we're just watching.
Now that they've turned on the light of Aworawo,
no,
he has become an expert.
They've restored it, but it is a reflection of the untidiness of the whole thing.
It's a good thing.
Because when in April, the whole thing started, government said universities, federal government universities, hospitals should be on band B, whether they have 24 hours or not. And they maintained that until June, only for them to just wake up one morning and just threw all the schools into band A. ABU reported that some experiment they have been doing for over 10 years was lost.
Whoa.
Yes. It is not a joke. It is not a joke. And nobody is calling anybody to order.
They should sue, though.
If government said, put them on band B, and some people just woke up one morning and just threw them into band A, and went to yank off their light, and nobody says anything. Yeah. For the presidency down.
It is that anyhowness that we're talking about.
And you don't have a choice. At least as you don't have, okay, don't give me 20 hours. Give me 16 so I can be on band B. But you don't have a choice.
No, but you can use it or not use it, though.
Yes, but when the point I'm making is when you are using it, you pay 225. Exactly. Another person is paying 65 for the same amount.
Exactly.
What kind of meter are you using? Is it single phase or three phase?
No. Let's be serious.
He has not gone to the physical camp.
No, don't you know our rights? Our rights are trampled upon. You don't have a choice.
But we do have a choice. It's the fact that we've chosen not to. And I'll say this, and it is that I'll throw this to a challenge to ABU. As a child of an academic, the fact that 10 years of research is lost because a private company decides to do something illegal should be challenged. And I hope ABU take whoever
I hope they do.
I think
whoever takes that to court.
Yes. I also think it should be challenged, definitely. Sure. But when this thing started, I pointed out some of these things. People were eager to test it there. I was pointing out the possible consequences and that this thing, I doubt its constitutionality. And for me, this should be the kind of thing Consumer Protection Office should be following. These are the kind of real things. And let me say straight away here that I personally, if the Consumer Protection Office does not follow, I will help offer class action for things like this. Maybe this is what we need
Yeah.
to wake up the nation. At the moment, and that allows me to talk about consumer protection, what they're doing to try to fix the price, I don't know if it's my ideology, but I'm allergic to it. This idea that you want to force people to do their price. If you want price to reduce, it's very simple 101 economics. Increase the supply. The reason why people can manipulate price is they have something close to oligopoly or monopoly.
No, that's
We're
not true.
even an
Imports, yeah,
import
exactly. That's
dependent.
the
Yes,
issue.
go and work on that side. Whether you
Yeah.
import
There's very
or you
little
produce
production.
more,
No, but
go and work on
no,
the
but that's
supply.
but that is the job.
Bro,
Oh, sorry,
we're going to
Prof.
speak
Go
about
ahead.
sports. Yeah.
No, the second, that's Senegal. Well, the young man has done well so far. I've always said there is no magic wand.
Yeah.
You have to, I mean, he struggled in this price reduction. He's achieving some success now, which is commendable. But one thing I want to say, first on the media thing, I'm disappointed that under a FAI government, we are still having people looking for technical words to describe whether it is free or it should be, it is free, but that is not the case. And that is a letdown. The other thing is this, policy, the way they arrive at policy. I was disappointed when I heard the president announced that French will no longer be an official language, Arabic will now be the official language. I got angry. When you do that, you are depriving Senegalese of a major thing. What is wrong if Senegalese understand Arabic and French?
yes.
You know, decisions taken in anger are always not right.
Yeah.
Just because they don't like France, they choose. That is not how to arrive at policy that will be beneficial.
That's how to govern the country.
Then finally, sports. Well, the NFF, we hope they sort this out so that one can move on. Osimhen, well, it's unfortunate what has happened. Some of it is his team, that is the management. Some of it is the management of his club, especially the president, who is, well, if I use the word greedy, that will not be salacious, because the offer is 5 million. He said, 5 million was what caused the whole thing. And it's a loss to everybody. It's a loss to the club. It's a loss to Osimhen. And then Osimhen himself, he needs to calm down, because he will have had more requests that he didn't have because of that, backlash from the comments he made, with Finidi George. And then it's actually generally, why you have not got a club? Why make it seem as if you are no longer part of that club? See how long it took, what's his name? This young man who now plays for Real Madrid, Mbappe. It took him years. Yes. See how long it took him to move from PSG to Real Madrid. He calmed down. They kept on
From
stopping.
Real Madrid?
No, from PSG to Real Madrid. Okay. Yes, he wanted to go, but they blocked him, but he calmed down. But you see, Osimhen already withdrew himself from the team when he had not got, a club. He needs to calm down so that, his talents will not just be talent that is buried. Talent that will really manifest, fetch him something, fetch his family something, of course, fetch Nigeria a lot.
Okay, let's take one more topic, if we can. Brazil started blocking Elon Musk's social media platform X early on Saturday, making it largely inaccessible on both the web and through its mobile app, after the company refused to comply with the judge's order. X missed a deadline imposed by Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes to name a legal representative in Brazil, triggering the suspension. It marks an escalation in the months-long feud between Musk and de Moraes over free speech, far-right accounts, and misinformation. Reactions from young people in Sao Paulo were mixed. Now, that's the story. Now, the issue is that Brazil is going to have an election in October. And Justice Moraes is saying, you must have a legal representative. Elon Musk has said they were withdrawing their legal representative. And Moraes, defending national interest, says no. If there is political misinformation, who do we hold responsible? And in that regard, they first decided that accounts belonging to Starlink be frozen. But there's the political dimension between Bolsonaro and Lula da Silva, with Elon Musk abusing the justice, saying he's a lackey of Lula da Silva, or the other way around, and the far right saying that this is an assault on free speech. Let me start with you, Professor Aworawo.
Well, I think the blocking is not right. is not right. I mean, there are wrongs on both sides. Elon Musk is a businessman, and sometimes the way he carries on, well, is surprising, because a businessman should be more level-headed, more subtle, but Elon Musk does not display any of those qualities, which is why we are where we are. But of course, X is very important in, communication, messages being passed and all that. And being an election year, it could be interpreted to mean that, Lula da Silva is afraid that X will be used to pass on information that will be detrimental to his political ambition. So, to sum up, they should, compromise and sort things out so that X can be restored and people can have, the opportunities it presents to be able to communicate and interact.
Professor Kila?
Well, I think, on the surface, X under Elon Musk, or X owned by Elon Musk, are violating the law of the country. That's on surface, and you cannot do that if you're asked to have legal representation for the purpose of tracing accountability to you. Logic wants you to do that. That's on the surface. But there's some political undertones in it, and it becomes more difficult. I think the Brazilian government has missed something we teach in strategy and policy making, which is that when you want to make a policy, when you want to make a decision, you look at two sides, who wins or who gains in what you want to do. That's strategic thinking. And I think what they should have done is to consider X as an essential infrastructure for Brazil people that they're using regularly. And if they want to wield the stake, what they should have done is to hit X, the corporation, or Elon Musk's bank account, They should have found a way in which they fine him or freeze his account so that he loses money, but Brazilians continue to use the service. I think that should be the mindset when we deal with corporation on behalf of the people, i.e. in government, so that whatever we do when we treat with corporation, we'll make sure that people do not lose. If anybody has something to lose, it will be the corporation that benefits from usage and is violating legal administrations or legal standings or administrative ordinances. I think that should be the way to go.
Well, okay,
I mean, just flashback to our own ban, I think, 2-3 years ago. Clearly illegal. The ECOWAS court gave the judgment. People migrated to that bird, like a yellow, I forget what that platform, that Indian platform was called.
Yes,
some Indian platform chat that the Nigerian government went cozy with. I think they even some investment that we put into it, I'm not even sure if it's of course, yeah. I'm not even sure if it's in business. But anyway, I think I do agree with you that X breaking the law should not then mean that you're depriving citizens their rights, and especially in the context of politics. But the truth of the matter is that Elon Musk has bought himself a platform to be a bit of a bully. And even him, his tweets include elements of misinformation and disinformation, and that's quite problematic. So I can understand why a country with obviously fraught political lines will be mindful of what their citizens have access to. But I think, to your point, they could have found more creative ways to hit at Musk without depriving citizens of the platform. I mean, I was just reading that it's actually not the most popular platform in the country, but X, for some odd reason, in a lot of countries, has a political tint to how people use it.
Yeah, it
that makes it. Yeah,
it makes that kind of platform because it lends itself to that.
Exactly.
Then its audience all over the world. Yeah. The audience are more sort of
educated
political
as
audience.
Well, more aware as well. Yeah. So unfortunate, but it'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
Okay, just before we go, I mean, I don't think...
Before we go, I don't know if... Do you mind me reading
I want to take another topic.
Another topic, okay.
Yeah, I mean, to take the opportunity of having two professors and a professor's daughter, and also an educationist in our own right in this on this panel. This whole controversy about the 18-year-old limit for NECO, WASC, and university admission. Very briefly, as we try to wrap up the program, let me start with you, Yemi Adamolekun.
I'll start from an article that I read that someone was trying to make the point that the minister wasn't doing anything new, but that the minister was merely implementing an existing
Is that a piece by Professor Farouk Berogi.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, or somebody
Or
else. I don't
another
remember.
one.
Maybe.
Okay.
But whatever. But that's the point. And the point was that if you enter primary school at 6 and you do 6-3-3-4, that, or 6-3-3, I guess I would say, that you'll be 18 by the time you enter. Yeah, that might be it in terms of on paper, but the law also doesn't make double promotion illegal. And so I think when blanket statements are made in a country that's struggling with, I think in my view, more fundamental issues, and I think that's the question we should ask. What does this problem solve? The fact that you want children or students to enter university at 18. I mean, I entered university, I believe, at 16. So I'm a bit trying to understand what problem we're trying to solve that in the grand scheme. And I think the parallel that I've seen on quite a number of platforms is that we're not fighting against child marriage, against that in some parts of the country, you can marry at 16, 15.
At 12.
There we go. I know the former emir, now back emir, was something he was working on when he was first emir of Kano. So that's not an issue.
The old new emir.
Sorry?
The old new emir.
Old new emir, exactly. So that's not what we're fighting, but we're trying to regulate when students have access to education without even focusing on the type of education we're making available. So for me, that really is the conversation that should be had. And lastly, in a very typical way of government communication, it's just shoddy. There's no clarity. Everybody is up in arms. There's like, this is how we're going to do it. Obviously, if you were double promoted and you show maturity and that, I mean, what really are we trying? What problem are we trying to solve?
Professor Kila?
Well, I think the starting point is the faulty one. That starting point that Yemi Adamolekun was pointing out, what problem are we trying to solve? Once you cannot answer that question in a clear way, you're going to find yourself in an unnecessary tangle web. Because so far, one, there's been no problem that we've had in this country that said it is because the graduate was too young. We don't have such problem. If anything, people just don't behave well. But I think we're also losing sight.
There is the argument about maturity.
Yes. Maturity, that what? It's a very flimsy argument. And by the way, this idea of saying that the person doing it is not doing something new, is just implementing, it's one of the most patronizing and dehumanizing statements that are made. Because how can you be implementing something you don't believe in or you don't understand? It's just like somebody going there to say subsidy is gone. They say because it was done before. Total rubbish, if you ask me. Because you should, if you're going to implement something, if you're going to push something forward, you should agree with it. If there is any imprint you can put on the story of humanity, is to review what has been done before you, to say, I do not agree with it. So if you're putting it forward, like people who tell me on X, as they say, a tweet is not an endorsement, they don't repost it.
Exactly.
They don't send me something on WhatsApp. Let me tell my friends and family. Don't send me something on WhatsApp saying, as copied or as shared. If you're doing it, do you agree with it or send your comments? So those who bring policy forward, saying it was there before, it doesn't make any sense. I believe that they're losing what is going on in the world, the trend. I call people to look at the average age of Olympians. Do we notice how it has gone down? The people winning gold in all competition, generally speaking. Do we look at the age of footballers? Do we look at the age of singers? It's a new world. People are growing. The issue of maturity on campus does not stand. There is a rule, and I stand for it, for treating universities like advanced secondary school. If you have children, they're treated like children. As long as you don't curtail their right, because you're not their parents, they're your teacher. If you think they don't understand common rules of doing things, what we should be doing is making our secondary school wake up to their understanding that these young people are going to go far in life. When most of them graduate anyway, they still need postgraduate studies. The truth of the matter, whether parents accept it or not, but the earlier they do, the better, is that the bachelor's degree today is almost like a school certificate of decades ago.
Okay, Professor Aworawo.
Well,
do you agree? Because
I vehemently disagree. Vehemently. They have said that what problem does this solve? It's actually that it creates huge problems. Now, I've been dealing with this.
So you agree? That's what
vehemently disagree
With them,
with
not
the
with
policy.
with the policy. Vehemently.
For one,
Now,
no,
I have been dealing
radical.
with these children. This decision is based on conjecture.
Yes. Not
And
reality.
conjecture that is not evidence-based.
Yes.
I've been living with these children since 1996. 16 years they come in.
Yeah.
There has never been one single example of
Behavior
not
due to-
meeting up either emotionally
Yeah.
or intellectually on account of age. That's one. Two, if you look at the highest score in JAMB in the past 10, 15 years,
Youngest people.
16. There's no 18 among them. 16, 17. 16, almost 90%. A few 17. The question I'm asking them is, those 18 they're advocating, where are they when these 16?
I guess.
We're going past them.
Yes. And we have monitored the lives of these children. 90% of them go ahead to make first class.
Yes.
They are in Harvard, they are in Cambridge, they're everywhere. If you had delayed them to 18, what would you have gained?
Yeah.
The other side to it is this. Those in final year now who just graduated a few weeks ago, they spent 6 years.
Yes.
If they had come in at 18, the 2 years they lost in school,
lost, yes.
who is compensating them for it? So there are too many things that are linked to it. Now, there's the argument that, some children, parents rush their children and all that.
Fair point. 16,
there's a rule, there's a provision. Your child can't enter school until they are 16. Yeah. So the 16 is like the middle position. It has weeded off those who will have wanted to bring their children at 12, 13, 14. If you are not 16, you can't come. So that is just the middle position and just neat. People have been saying, Parogi wrote and said in the US model cannot be the standard globally. Exactly. In Norway, there is no age limit. And they are doing better than the US. So those who are referring to Parogi, they are just wasting their time. They should just leave us. And I've also asked the question. We have over 20 million out-of-school children. The minister has not uttered a word since he took over a year ago on this matter. That will become a crisis, is a time bomb moving forward.
This is also a crisis because you leave secondary school at 16.
Yes.
If you say those are the youngest getting jam, you now have 2 years to enter university. So the 2 years in between, roaming the streets
that
of
is
Nigeria.
Now, those in secondary school now, in SS2 and 3, they are 14, 15.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, next year, they will not be qualified to even write WAEC. What would the minister do with them? He would tell them to go home and come back 2 years later to write. It doesn't make sense.
They should go and line up.
They should just allow the 16 to stay and let sleeping dogs lie.
Okay, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Professor David Aworawo, Professor Anthony Kila, and Okpeyemi Adamolekun. I think for today, enough is enough. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. Here on Arise News, I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.